Okay, good morning, everybody, or good evening, wherever you are. Really, what I want to talk about here is processes for infusing change of any kind into an organization. Toyota Kata is one of the things that we want to do, and so it's kind of an overarching context. But mostly, I'm talking about the process for change agents to use to get things into place, and Toyota Kata certainly is a big piece of that. Our key challenge here is Lean and Toyota Kata and other approaches to CI have what's called causal ambiguity, which means it's really hard to establish a direct link between what you're doing and the outcome. So what's it mean is we put in a lot of processes and process mechanics, and we develop teams that are quickly able to solve problems, and somehow that produces tangible business results. Now, the beauty of Toyota Kata is there's a lot stronger direct link to those tangible business results, but we still have to work mostly on developing the teams that quickly solve problems. If we don't do that, the results are unlikely to occur. So this can make this long, expensive effort a hard sell. So as a change agent, the first thing to keep in mind is it's crucially important to have a strong sense of what you're trying to create. And that helps you keep your bearings when the waters are getting rough. So you want to maintain a picture in your mind that you can compare to what you're seeing in the organization. And that reference standard, it's a standard, right, is a point of comparison between what you see and where you're trying to go, so that you can always see the gap. Even when you're in the middle of a bunch of turmoil, you've got a direction that you want to head. So the first thing I want to do is I kind of want to quickly benchmark what that might look like so that you're on the same page I am. And if you have a different page, that's fine. I think I see two skills that are consistent across those organizations that are long-term really, really good. One is they're really good at problem solving, which is not the same as firefighting, but they're really good at methodically identifying problems, identifying obstacles that are in their way of getting where they want to go and solving them. And that is excellence in the here and now. You've all seen teams that are really good at this. Then you have the other piece, which is that they do this in a way that develops people's problem solving skills, so that as people join the organization, they inherit the same cultural process of problem solving that everybody else has. And that is establishing excellence in the future. So right away, what we see here is it doesn't work if you just have a small cadre of people who are going and solving all the problems every day, because they're the only ones who get good at it. This is a snip from a longer video. It's only about 90 seconds long. Don't worry right now about the Toyota Kata coaching that's going on here. What I want you to do is listen to Teresa, who is a team leader in this automotive tier 1 supplier. Listen to how skillfully she's able to describe what's going on in her process and what she understands about what's going on.
So we originally did a cycle study on here, and there should be making the daily requirements about overtime. But we did see a large variance in the third cycle.
So that's what's going on now.
What we're looking at, this is the current flow.
Yeah.
And there's 3 people. The blue is here's the first person.
Oh, yeah, I see.
Second's purple, and this is the third.
Uh-huh.
So we drew this out. We noticed there was a lot of wasted motion in there.
Uh-huh.
But even if we reduce the motion,
Yeah.
we're still going to be in good shape to not work overtime.
Okay.
So I think our focus was wrong, and we need to look at this. This may be prevent of having them work overtime with the large variance. So some days they work and some days they don't.
Right.
So we need to understand what the variance is.
So I love that part of this conversation, because I'm listening to Teresa, and what I'm hearing is somebody who, yes, she was just exposed to Toyota Kata in one of Jeff's classes, but she clearly has a deep understanding of what's going on in her day-to-day work. When I talk about developing people's problem-solving skills, this is what I mean. She's a frontline leader. Take a look at your organization's frontline leaders and ask if they could be that articulate about what's going on in their process. So we've got to ask what has to be true for team members at all levels to become very skilled. They're talking in this way every day, and that's the only way you're going to get there. So some characteristics of a continuous improvement culture that I see are these organizations are going to have a structure for how they talk about problem solving. It's not so much a structure for problem solving, but there's a structure for how they talk about it. And that structure is used by leaders to solve cross-functional problems. And the leaders teach that standard structure by following it as they talk about issues. That structure is taught by leaders along with some basic, as I say, industrial engineering skills, but I don't want to imply that's limited to industry. When I talk about, maybe I should edit this to say process improvement skills, what good processes look like. And again, that's just what they talk about. And the leaders, so they're referencing and teaching that structure whenever improvement is being discussed. And you'll notice it's the leaders that are doing this. The leaders are establishing the direction for improvement in problem solving. In Toyota Kata, we talk about direction and challenge. The leaders are the ones who establish that. And they establish those priorities for what to work on and what not to work on, because there's plenty of stuff to do. And finally, these organizations experiment to learn what works and what doesn't work as they expect it to. And the leaders insist on information that's derived from direct experiments and direct observation. So if we want to build a culture where the leaders are doing these things, we have to work to shift their conversations in this direction. So obviously, we're here to talk a little bit about Toyota Kata. The 4 steps of the improvement kata, just to review, are to understand the direction or challenge. And here, what we're asking really is what overarching problem are we trying to solve? Or what am I trying to learn about? Grasp the current condition. So what do I know as a learner? What do I not know? And what's my threshold of knowledge? What's the boundary between where I am in that zone of having to learn versus I have evidence-based information that says, yeah, I understand this. Establish my next target condition. So where am I striving to go next? And what obstacles will I have to overcome to get there? In other words, what will I need to learn? And then I work and systematically experiment against obstacles that are in the way of that target condition. The idea is I need to learn my way to it. This is a really high-level overview, but the coach's job, or the direct leader's job, is to make sure that the Teresas of the world are staying within the guardrails of this structure as they're going through meeting their challenge. So in Teresa's case, she has to deliver all the parts every day or every week without overtime. So that was the challenge and direction. And the general direction for her is going to be one-by-one flow, because that's clearly a Toyota-based system. She's grasped the current condition, and in that conversation, she's done a really good job describing what's going on. Okay, so my key point is that as a change agent, your reference standard for a problem-solving culture is your direction. Your challenge is you're trying to shift the nature of the conversations toward ones that sound like what we saw on the video clip. So this is important because it's not about fixing the processes themselves. Your role as a change agent is to enable the rest of the organization to work on their processes in a thorough scientific way. This is your point of comparison to gauge the progress that you are making as a change agent. So the ideal situation, hey, the leaders are asking about Toyota Kata development. Awesome. Okay, you can just jump right in. You can teach a big class, and then you can start setting up storyboards, and that just works, and we're off to the races. And that kind of works sometimes, but wait a minute, sometimes we run into, even with the most well-meaning leaders, well, I just should be the coach because I'm the boss. I can just read the questions on the card. I hear that all the time. I don't have time to attend a class or daily cycles. I hear we don't have time to study our processes. There's things we need to fix now. So what starts out as well-meaning can easily get embroiled in those heavy seas of having to deal with the immediate. So what can we do? So again, having that sense of where you're trying to go is what's important here. You don't have to do it all at once. It's equally important not to confuse where you want to end up with a path to get there. And the path to get there is something that's ambiguous. We don't really know. So first question really is, what kind of change are you trying to make? There's technical things where we just put in the mechanics and we know how to do it. And then there's things that are changing the culture, what is referred to as adaptive leadership, where you have to shift the way people behave. And these are two classes of problems, and it's important for you to understand which of these columns you're working in. If the solution is clearly defined, then you have a technical problem. But if you have to learn your way to get there, you're likely in the adaptive column. If it's clear, or you can look up the solution, you can research it, versus you got to figure it out. So what's the type of work I just implement? I can put in one-by-one flow pretty easily. But if I have to do diagnostics, I have to experiment, I have to learn, I am more dealing with people, and I'm dealing with people's behavior, or I'm dealing in an area where I don't know yet what the path is. Now, here's what's crucial. The technical experts or the authority, people who have the answers, I can outsource. If I'm a leader, I can say, hey, technical experts, I want you to install this. It's just an engineering solution, and let's just put it in. Versus the stakeholders whose behavior has to change to make it work. So the example that Ron Heifetz at Harvard uses here is a cardiac patient. So the cardiac patient can outsource to a surgeon, and probably should, putting in a stent or doing the, opening the arteries up again. But the patient, and only the patient, can change his behavior so that it doesn't happen again. And the doctor can't do that for him. And this is the primary difference. So if I'm in an organization trying to do continuous improvement, trying to do Toyota Kata, the change agent, I know how Toyota Kata works. I have the answers. We just put this structure into place and we practice on following the script. But at the end of the day, the people whose behavior must change are the learners and the coaches, because their routines have to change, the way they think has to change, and they have to do the work under the guidance of the master coach. This can be pretty fast. I can even throw storyboards in a matter of a couple of weeks, but usually it takes time, and it takes practice, and it takes willing to not be very good at it and still keep going before that shift actually begins to happen. So fix the problems, implement the solution. And here, what we got to pay attention to is, are we making progress? Are things getting better? And then finally, I've got to know what I'm doing to put in that technical solution, But really, in order to be an effective change agent, what I need to bring to the table is, in addition to that, is curiosity about what's going on in the organization. So I see in the chat, grasping the current condition is hugely underrated. And one of the keys here is, am I operating in the space of a technical solution? Or am I operating in the space of having to shift people's behavior? And one of the key differences here is managing expectations, because one is I can do it quickly and I just implement a solution, versus saying we're going to gauge our progress on making progress. Are things better today than they were yesterday? We have to be clear that, yes, we know a lot about putting these changes into place. We can research a lot, but ultimately it is the Teresas of the world, it is her boss, it is their boss and their boss who are going to have to shift their behavior and change the way they talk to each other if this is going to engage and stay. Whose work is it? And the expectations are the point often where we have different expectations between the leadership and the change agents. So it's just something to be aware of as you're going into this. So this is not a technical process to implement. This is a process of social learning. So here's a great question. What things do we as change agents typically do that can actually create resistance? So I've got three that I see kind of a lot. One is using fear as a motivator. And we hear this, we have to create a burning platform. My theory on burning platform, if I was on that platform in the picture, the only thing I'm concerned about is getting off of that platform. Fear is not a good motivator. Yeah, if there's an existential crisis for the organization, we have to deal with it and we have to do what we have to do to keep things going. But those things might not be in the direction we want to go. Fear does not create teamwork, only leadership does. So we've got to keep in mind that creating fear as a motivator is not going to work for us. The second one is forcing change, the mass change program, emphasizing compliance with audits, with assessments, goals based on how many tools I've put into place. How many Kata boards do we have up and running? This is going to put pressure on. And the interesting thing is you will get whatever you're measuring, people will put into place, but they will find a way to game your audit. They will find a way to make it look like they're doing it while they're engaging in business as usual. I know we're in this when I hear, how do I make them support the changes? What coercion am I trying to put into place? That's not going to work. And then the third one is always comparing wherever they are to perfection. Well, at Toyota, and I'm just going to ask, have you ever worked there? Because it probably isn't as perfect as you envision. Oh, I'm going to point out waste every day. Well, that's waste. That's waste. Look at all that waste. That is just going to have people not happy to see you. Expect expert application after superficial training. Gosh, I see this all the time. I'm going to put you in a class, do a Lean 101 for 3 days, and then what I expect is immediately that people are going to be experts, which is interesting because the people who really teach the class took years to learn this, not 3 days. Somehow people think that in 3 days they can impart a lot of wisdom. Just assume if it's classroom training, it's superficial because you have to get out and do it. So what do we want to do? First to understand is there's probably no sequence of steps. There's no cookbook that you can say, this is how we push this through the organization. That's a good way to create resistance. There might be cases and circumstances where nothing will work. I haven't encountered them. The key here is, there's no certainty in this process, but we do know there are some principles that we might be able to follow that seem to engage more effectively. Each organization is different with different people and different dynamics. But there's some general principles that can work to lower the barriers to change. This is Everett Rogers' classic diffusion of innovations curve, where we look at the people who are eager to find new ways, the pioneers. We look at the people who are, hey, this looks cool, I'm going to do it. And then we have a larger population that I call pragmatists. I think he calls the early majority. He calls these the late majority. I prefer conservatives, and I despise the term laggards. I think we have skeptics. We have people who need to see others doing it first. If you're watching this, you're likely somewhere on the left of this curve. But as you diffuse change through the organization, it's going to be really hard to predict who is going to do it next. And then we've got this gap here. And crossing this gap requires a different approach. So it's pretty straightforward to get those early adopters on board, and they're often the ones that sign up to be on your CI teams. The rest of the organization, the managers, the middle managers, the frontline supervisors, they're in the part of this curve that is here. The people on the left, hey, this is interesting. This is new. I want to be part of it. Okay, it might be helpful. Can you tell me more? They're seeking information. Now, on the right hand, we have people who are largely going to learn from their peers. They aren't going to be looking to the early adopters, the pioneers, the enthusiasts for their learning. They're going to be looking at what the people that are closest to them are doing, and they're going to be adopting that behavior. And the further to the right on the curve you go, the more of that you have. And on the far right, really until it is just the way things are done. And once it is, they'll come on board. But there is not a lot of point in trying to fight with them because they are just going to push back on you. What we want to do is, rather than trying to push relationships and push change to the right, what we want to do is pull relationships toward us. We want at each step of the way to be engaging the people that are next most willing to try. And this is hard because you can't predict who those people are going to be. And so you can't say, well, we're going to do this part of the organization and we're going to roll it out here, and then this part and roll it out here, and this part and roll it out here, and expect it all to work, because these different mindsets are diffused evenly through the organization. Some fundamental principles. First is start where they are. So Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand their competencies, understand their interrelationships, understand what they think the problems are, and acknowledge and honor the work that has already been done. So in other words, work to build on prior efforts versus to reboot everything with a new program. And this brings us to, we want to seek to understand existing processes, not so much the technical aspects as a change agent, but rather to understand the existing ways people interact to get things done. In other words, start by grasping the current condition of how the organizations and how the people and the groups within the organization interact with each other when they're talking about change, when they're talking about technical issues, when they're talking about problem solving, when they're talking about improvement. Pay attention to how they talk, who they talk to, because that's information you're going to need in order to know who to engage and how to engage. So the second principle, back to the curve here, is pull the willing towards you. So we want to create psychological safety for them to engage with you. One-on-one engagement with those who are most interested is much more effective than putting everybody in a class and assuming that they're all going to get it. You want to create relationships that are based on choice and building a sense of competence so that they come to you to feel better. hey, John is really helpful with me to help me solve a problem I'm having. And that'll bring them back to you. And once you have the conversations going, then you can start pushing the conversations in the correct direction by asking coaching questions, by walking them through grasping the current condition of their process, of walking them through saying, hey, where do you think we need to begin first? And then bringing the structure in as they're ready to hear it. So the key here is creating relationships based on choice and a sense of competence. For every interaction you have with anyone, ask yourself this: do you enhance or diminish their sense of relatedness, their sense of trust, their sense of being a part of something that's bigger than just them, their sense of belonging to something? Do you enhance or diminish their sense of autonomy, their ability or their sense that they're making choices in what they do and how they go about doing it? You enhance or diminish their sense of competence. This is something I had to learn brutally, because it's really easy to come in knowing everything, especially if you are an expert, and just overwhelm somebody with the whole thing all at once. Well, you have to do this, this, and this. And what they learn from that conversation is all the stuff they don't know. And what we have to do is get them a sense of what they need to know next, and then a sense that they have learned something. And then they will build some competence. They will begin to have more trust. They will begin to want some more of that. If you're just starting, you need to begin with building the rapport and building the relationship and establishing trust. Principle 3, use as much of the existing structure as you possibly can. One of my principles is make doing the new thing look like or sound like an adjustment to the old thing. If you can do this, you will make a lot more progress. If you can adopt existing language, adopt existing processes, and adjust, what I say is adjust the targeting mechanism so that maybe it's working on clumping closer to the right thing. So what do they expect to see? And work hard to make it look like that. The story here is I was working with a company and they were really into the Toyota Kata thing. They started putting up Toyota Kata storyboards. Then the corporate CI people came in from Chicago. And they said, we don't have experimenting records. We use Kaizen newspapers. And because that was their paradigm and that's what they expected to see. So all the CI director locally did was he changed the name at the top. And he called it a Kaizen newspaper, but he kept the rest of the structure there. Oh, we don't have obstacles. We have issues. Fine. We have issues here, not obstacles. It's still the same process. Don't introduce more change than is necessary to make progress. So if they don't like the words Toyota Kata, well, we're working to develop coaches. If they don't like experiment records, call it a Kaizen newspaper. If we don't like Kata storyboards, then we call it the Daily Huddle Board. If the words are pushing people back, don't fret it. Use the words that they want to hear. For example, do your meetings use action items? So you can transition the format of your action item record to something that looks like the format of the experimenting record. Then we can ask different questions. So what did we plan to do at that last meeting? What did we say we were going to do? It's amazing how many meetings never go over this. What did we expect? Almost never do meetings go over this. What actually happened? What have we learned? And then use that information to inform the next step that we're going to take before the next meeting. So now we have to put a couple of rules into place. No action item goes for 3 weeks. The action item goes to what are we going to talk about on next Wednesday? And we can start to bring the mindset into an existing conversation by taking existing structure and just nudging it in the direction we want it to go. Other examples Is there already a daily meeting where you discuss problems? Great. Incorporate the improvement kata patterns into that versus creating a new meeting. Are there already effective problem solving? Well, we use A3. Great. Introduce more effective coaching, because often organizations that may have an effective problem solving culture or problem solving structure still aren't very good at it, because it often is just the problem solver or the learner off on their own and just reporting end results. So let's bring that conversation in and let's work on checking progress on the way. Then they learn to do it more effectively. Does the organization already run 5-day rapid improvement events or Kaizen events? Awesome. Then take that format, incorporate the improvement and coaching kata format into those events. So instead of making a long list of action items, use something that looks like the experimenting record. You're still taking them through understanding the direction or challenge. That's the whole point of the event. You're still taking them through grasping the current condition, so you can adopt the starter kata for that. You're still establishing a target for where they're trying to go next. Get them to articulate it more clearly. You're still working on trying things, just structure those action items as experiments. And as the change agent or the teacher, every time you engage the team, use the coaching questions, and you are teaching them the improvement kata structure. Then Monday morning, we don't have a long list of stuff to do. We have the next experiment toward the next target condition. Now, keep the conversation going, but rather than doing it as fast as we can during the course of 5 days, we take the cadence down to that once a day process and keep going. So the objective now is to anchor an improvement storyboard and a coaching cycle rather than to fix everything in 5 days. The structure absolutely works for that. So the key point here is that it's easier to adopt existing patterns than to say, nope, those are wrong, we're going to do this new one. And the second key point is that these are all possible target conditions you as a change agent would be striving toward. So that's how to be thinking of this. Where am I trying to go? Where am I now? What's the next thing I'm going to try to put into place? And as I try to put into place, I will learn what the actual obstacles are. I will learn where the pushback is. I will learn the resistance. And then I have to engage my coaching and change agent skills to overcome those obstacles and get these changes into place. My next principle is do what you can where you can. So you want to create an active network of people who are actually interested and engaged. If you can get a learning network going, you are off to the races, where your job, and don't waste energy trying to break down resistance. Trust the process, trust the people, you'll get there. Engage the people who are most willing to come with you, and they in turn will bring more in with them. You want to build alliances and networks within the organization. So the key point here is you want to develop teamwork. And the neat thing about teamwork, first, is that it isn't a thing, but the second is you don't have to have a formal org chart that defines what the team is. A team is any group of people who are trying to take on a challenge, and they're working together toward doing it. So teamwork is a property of how people interact with one another. Your job as a change agent is to help them work as a team. You are going to bring in clarity. Hey, this is where we're trying to go. You're going to work to develop their skills, and you're going to work to build trust, not just between you and the team members, but between the team members. If you can do this, you create a cadre of people who will diffuse the change with their peers, because they'll be talking about things in a fundamentally different way. And as they do, they'll bring others with them. Reinforce success. Put your support behind the people who are making the most effort and progress. Keep strengthening those relationships and trust. Build those mutually supporting connections and stay engaged. This is another mistake a lot of people make, is as a change agent, they think that once they have it going, they can back away and move their effort elsewhere. And at that point, what happens is all of the other forces come back and begin eroding. So you've got to stay engaged and keep reinforcing where you're having success. Okay, and finally, focus on progress, not perfection. Was there an effort today? That's perfect. Was there an experiment tried today? Perfect. Was there learning today? Perfect. The primary predictor of success in this is perseverance. So you want to keep encouraging people to try so they learn. And it is about the level of effort and about practicing the right way. So yes, absolutely correct, but correct the one thing you are working on for them to get better. So leadership, which is what I'm talking about, is mobilizing people to make progress on difficult challenges. That's from Ed O'Malley at the Kansas Leadership Center. Leadership is an activity, not a position. Anybody can do it. It starts with you, and that is whoever is listening to this, and you must engage others. Your purpose must be clear, and it doesn't work every time, and you are taking some risk when you do it. That is part of being an effective change agent.
Thank you, Mark, for your time and sharing your experience and knowledge with us today.
Awesome. Thank you very much.